Привет, ютуберы! С вами канал Russian Oboe. И сегодня мы находимся с вами не как всегда с музыкантами, с солистами оркестра. Сегодня у нас замечательный гость, родом из Австралии, который обучался в Англии. Он является мастером гобоев, великолепных гобоев. Он нам сейчас все об этом расскажет. Встречаем Джон Армстронг.
Здравствуйте, очень приятно. Happy to be here and talking. It's great.
Джон, расскажи, как тебе Россия, как тебе переезд, вообще, что изменилось в твоей жизни?
So I should have been here a lot sooner, but coronavirus slowed things up. But I originally decided to come at least 2 years ago. But it came about because I met Vlad in Frankfurt one year, and we started chatting about developing the oboe as well as other instruments. And I visited Moscow in 2018 in February, and I was really impressed with what I saw, with what the guys were doing, and I actually really loved the feel of the city. A lot of raw energy to the town, and you wouldn't call it a town, sorry. I just decided, this is what I want to do. I was in China for a long time, so this feels very friendly and familiar after China.
Джон, я знаю, что ты работал в компании Ховард, потом в компании KGE, и сейчас ты работаешь у Влада в ателье Гончарова. Расскажи об этой работе.
Well, I'm now part of a much bigger organization, and because of that, I feel I'm getting a lot of support, and I feel like I'm part of something much larger, and I have a feeling of excitement that there are many plans and there are many new ideas that I didn't really see in China or in these other companies. So it might be because the team here is quite young, and it might be because I think it is a new type of industry for Russia. In the past, a lot of the instruments came from Europe, but now Vlad and the guys are trying to establish manufacturing in this country. And for me, that's very exciting to be part of that.
Джон, ты же являешься гобоистом. Вот мне очень интересно, так как ты уже, можно сказать, объехал весь мир, как тебе вообще наш российский, так назовем его, гобоизм?
I'm old enough to remember the USSR, and I remember the USSR State Symphony Orchestra, I forget the name, came to Australia and they performed in the Opera House, and Svetlanov was the conductor on that occasion. And I remember people saying, these poor oboe players, they were finding it hard to get cane and supplies and things. And now this is a completely different world because we have prominent oboists in major symphony orchestras in Europe, like the Concertgebouw, for example, and these players are Russian. And it used to be that Russia was known for its pianists and violinists, cellists, string players, but now increasingly it's a woodwind country and a brass country. So it's taking off, and that's exciting too.
Джон, вот у меня такой вопрос к тебе. Знаю, что скоро будет презентация нового инструмента, который делаешь ты. Он полностью, насколько я знаю, сделан из российских материалов. Расскажи что-нибудь об этом.
And it's very interesting too, because there are some materials that some of the guys here are familiar with that are not currently being used. And I'm not sure how much I can say, Vlad. So, for example, titanium is an interesting metal to make mechanism with because it's incredibly strong but also very light. I've heard some people say that this will change the sound of the oboe or a bassoon, for example. It will be lighter, and the mechanism does actually change the sound of an instrument. If you take all of the keys off a bassoon or an oboe and cover the holes with some putty, for example, and blow some simple scales, the sound is very different. Put the keys back on, the sound is much darker. I'm thinking with the lighter mechanism, we will have a lighter sound, but we can compensate by replacing the weight maybe with more wood in various places. This is the type of experimenting I'm very interested in. And it's possible because there are some young engineers here who have worked with other types of manufacturing can I say who they've worked for? Like in the aviation industry, where something like titanium is a common material. And it's actually not expensive in Russia as well, which is interesting.
Джон, а вот смотри, есть же такие компании, как там Мариго, Лоре, там Людвиг Франк, это такие прям, ну, мастодонты, так назовем это. Как ты думаешь, мы сможем с ними прям вот конкурировать?
I think yes, it certainly is. From what I've seen, I know it's possible. But I think to compete with them directly in what they do at the moment could be difficult. Whereas if we can make some innovation that suddenly makes our instruments attractive, for example, another problem is the problem with an oboe made of wood, they're often cracking. And even the very famous makers, of whom I adore, like for example, Marigo is, I think, a wonderful oboe, but they do often crack. And to people are spending a lot of money on an instrument that you could say maybe it's fundamentally flawed if so many are cracking. So this is a problem we need to address, and especially in a country like Russia, where the climate is so extreme. Between summer and winter, maybe 60 degrees difference in various places, correct, I think. So these are more problems that I think if we can fix these, it'll be impossible to keep us down. And I think in terms of quality of finish, that I know can be done. That is possible. And we're going to make those that part of the finished product, but we also want to have something additional, because it's not good enough just to make something as good as a famous brand or a little bit better. We have to have something unique.
Джон, а вот смотри, еще такой вопрос у меня. Сейчас появилось очень много гибридных гобоев, это где деревяшка вместе с пластиком. Как ты к этому относишься?
I think these are a good idea. The problem with music and musicians is that most musicians are fundamentally conservative. For example, when Boehm redesigned the flute, there was some opposition, but it was so much better that people changed in droves to a metal flute from a wooden flute. If we change the material of the oboe, there's a feeling about plastic that it's for students and it's not a serious material. So these are questions that have to be addressed, but you can say perhaps wood is not suitable for the top joint of an oboe unless we make certain design changes, or we can make progress in the way we're seasoning the wood. The thing about plastic is we have to make the oboe more accessible to students, because currently most children are playing the clarinet or the saxophone or the flute, and the oboe is seen as like a niche instrument. And for that reason, it sort of remains expensive. But if we can, through plastic instruments, for example, where they won't crack under warranty, and we can sell them at an affordable price, we can have more young Russian children playing the oboe, and indirectly we're contributing to the cultural development of this country, music, which is already a wonderful tradition. But I've got a very small concern. This is an English horn, but I want oboes to be played more often.
Джон, еще вопрос. Это не мой вопрос, это вопрос, который задают очень много сейчас гобоистов в Москве. Есть такая компания Мариго. И вот в чем заключается вопрос. Они ставят обычную механику и ставят золотую механику. И дело в том, очень интересно, золотую механику они ставят на какое-то определенное дерево или на то же самое, на которое ставят и обычную механику. Вот этот вопрос очень интересен, и он очень сейчас вот входит.
So I think it's a cultural thing. I was in China for 10 years, and for example, Ludwig Frank, they're selling all of their oboes with gold-plated mechanism, because to the Chinese purchaser, this is what they want, even if it's for a child. In my country, Australia, I don't know anybody who's playing on a gold-plated oboe, because they're thinking mainly about how the instrument plays. When they go to visit, for example, Marigot, if they take a trip to Paris, they want as many oboes to choose from. And if you're saying, I need gold-plated mechanism, you will have less, they will produce less instruments for you to make a choice from. In terms of sound, it doesn't make a difference. Some people say gold is better for tarnishing. For example, some people have a very acidic sweat, which causes tarnishing of the silver. But even in a country like China, where there is a problem with pollution, I've seen the gold change colour in China. But that might be saying something about China's pollution problem. And also in China, interestingly, and Japan, they love rose gold. It's very hard to sell an oboe with your standard yellowish looking gold. So for me, I mean, I've seen the gold in the reed insert and also gold in the octave inserts. It's hard for me to argue about this with people because the people who say these things are good are better players than I am. So maybe I can't hear the difference. Sometimes it's such a small amount that, you know, I'm just a mortal when it comes to playing the oboe. I'm not a Jacques Tisse or a Lele. Marigots, in some small countries like Australia, they like to imagine that maybe Marigot are sending second-rated instruments to their country and keeping all the best ones for the Europeans. And some Chinese were thinking this too. When I was very young, maybe I had this mentality, but from what I've seen, it's not the case. And I think Marigot would really like to keep everybody happy, and so they know some people just must have silver. And it's fate. You know, you select a piece of wood, this one goes for silver, this one goes for gold. Nobody's examining the wood, and it's like a piece of oboe cane. It's very difficult to, just by looking, to choose a good piece of cane. You have to twist it, and bend it, and tap it. So.
Вот, друзья, мы узнали, что как бы деревяшка-то что там, везде одинаковая. Как бы, хотите вы золотую механику, или хотите вы серебряную, хотите вы еще какую-нибудь механику, это уже как бы ваше дело. Вот, так что, деревяшка везде абсолютно одинаковая. Джон, спасибо тебе огромное, что уделил вообще время в своем графике, потому что, понимаю, работы очень много, и дай бог, чтобы вот инструмент, который скоро выйдет, он просто должен заявить о себе, и это будет огромный прорыв в России. Что бы ты хотел сказать вот нашим подписчикам, вообще вот людям, которые нас смотрят?
What I'd like to say is I'd like to get out of, not that I don't like Moscow, I'd like to leave Moscow and visit some of the other cities and meet some of the people in these towns and cities who play the oboe. When I was in China, I often traveled to some other cities with conservatoriums, and we would visit for a day or so, and I would just actually do free repairs, because some of these people in small towns would have no local technician to fix just a minor problem. And it was a good way of making friends and to meet people. And my colleague in China was actually selling instruments too. So it was sort of like a form of advertising, but for me it was really a good way to see China. And I'm hoping with maybe Philippe we can do something similar in Russia, who knows? But I'd like to visit, well, I've got a few cities in mind that I'd like to visit, but obviously the famous ones like St. Petersburg, and I'm going to Kazan soon, I'll be doing that. But even further east, actually, yeah, for sure.
Друзья, вот у нас состоялась долгожданная просто беседа с Джоном, мы ее ждали очень долго. Наконец-то у нас это получилось. Все ссылочки на Джона, все ссылочки на ателье Гончарова, все будут в описании данного видео. Подписывайтесь на наш канал, ставьте лайки, нажимайте колокольчик. Ютуберы, мы вас любим и ждем. Всем пока!